Hello everyone, welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings 54. Yep, we are steadily moving forwards with these things. They keep moving forwards. And, of course, we kind of have to move forwards. Somebody's got to. I can't sit here static forever. I mean, great Scott. If I sit static forever, I'm never going to go anywhere. I'm going nowhere fast tonight, so Merry Christmas to you all. In essence. Just sorting out some things real quick. Just making sure that everything is as it should be. Gotta do me admin. I will figure out a way to make this all automatic at some point, but right now, I'm doing things the manual way because, well, that makes sense. Hello, Chandel Lord Chandel. There we go. Marvellous. That's done. That's done. And right on time. There we go. And we're good. There we go. Excellent. Fleet's Random Ramblings is here. Marvellous, fantastic, brilliant. Right on time. Oh, bloody hell. Right, so, first things first, we start with Brackman's question from his Patreon, which he gets because he's a fantastic funder. He asks, what are the reasons to go for a smaller number of 30,000-ton battle cruisers over a larger amount of smaller super cruisers of 15 to 20,000 tons? If you mean post-treaties, the reason is that they are, well, there really is no reason. If you either build supercruisers or you build full-on capital ships, you don't build small 30,000-ton battle cruisers. You either build supercruisers or you build full-on capital ships. There is no in-between. Basically. The only nations that did the only nation that really did this was the Dutch with their 1047s, and that's because they had a very specific niche they needed to fulfill. But that was, again, they were really full-size capital ships, not... Like, it's one of those weird things where there is really no reason for a major nation to go for a small number of 30,000-ton battle cruisers. That's using up valuable slips you need for other things. Larger cruisers with more 8-inch guns are just generally better for killing treaty cruisers. So things like the Des Moines, things like the Baltimores, are just generally a better option for killing treaty cruisers that came before them. So, question starts from... No, I want... Thank you. Okay, put it there, please. Okay, so... First question from... From Typical Gunnery Officer. Do you think the Midway class in the 1970s is a medium carrier for the USN? They either use as training or frontline carriers and are cheaper to operate than unlike the super carriers. Some people are calling the Midways mid-class carriers when the super carriers entered service. No, they're not a medium carrier. They're a
What am
carrier.
I?
They're just a carrier.
What was the question?
Do you think the Midway class in the 1970s is like a medium carrier for the USN? It either uses a training and frontline carriers and are cheaper to operate, unlike the super carriers. Some people are calling the Midways mid-class carriers when the super carriers entered service. No, they're just carriers.
They're fleet carriers. They're not super carriers, but they did not function as training carriers. They were cheaper to operate to an extent, but not as cheap So are they flatly cheaper to operate than a super carrier? Yes. Does this correlate to the capability provided? No, they provide significantly less capability than one would expect from that cost.
It's not like the Essex class where you have a clear step down in cost and capability, but they still give you something.
No, the Essexes still cost far more than their relative capabilities would imply.
Oh, really?
Compared to a Forrestal, yes. So keep in mind the cheapest carrier, or the most cost-effective carrier you can ever operate, is the largest that you can reasonably operate. This is what 100 years of carrier operations have taught people. And this is what, small carrier advocates in the U.S. tend to forget.
They might be cheaper to build, but they won't be cheaper to operate.
They're not even meaningfully cheaper to build, practically speaking. The only sense in which they'll be cheaper is they wouldn't be nuclear. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee cheaper. Say the U.S. decides to build a 45 to 50,000 ton conventional 2 catapult Catobar carrier, right? That's going to cost a substantial fraction of a Ford class, except it's probably not going to be able to operate F/A-XX. It'd be able to operate F-35, but not the heavy component of the air wing in any effective manner. You'd be able to operate 2 E2s off of it, and some MQ-25s, but you're not going to successfully, at least, operate any reasonable number of the fleet defense / heavy multi-role aircraft that is going to replace the Super Hornet. People forget just how big that's going to have to be. I wouldn't call it a medium carrier. I don't like this is a medium carrier. No, it's a carrier. So if the Midways were classed as CV or CVA, they weren't classified as a medium carrier. They didn't they weren't even considered like a light fleet carrier. I mean, for most of the Cold War, they were able to operate F-4 Phantoms, right? Which for most of the Cold War was the premier fleet defense fighter of the United States Navy. And they didn't operate F-14s. Yes, in a pinch, they could land them in an emergency, but
once it's down, it ain't getting up again.
Well, no, they can launch them too. It's just not effective, not efficiently, right? And that matters.
Makes sense. The CVV is not a... There's no such thing as a medium carrier. It doesn't exist.
A medium carrier is a fleet carrier. It is the standard of a carrier.
It is the entry level.
Charles de Gaulle is a bad one, and she's a nuclear-powered one. But She's a fleet carrier. The Queen Elizabeth class carriers are fleet carriers. Could they have been conventional super carriers if they were designed slightly differently and were Catobar? Yes. In my opinion, you don't get that kind of capability on 2 catapults, which is what the original plan for them called for. But the original Catobar plan, I should say. So, yeah, there's no medium carrier, but I think we've kind of beat that dead horse.
Yeah, we kind of kicked it.
Unless there's a follow-on.
So, YouTube question from Knight6831. What exactly do you find wrong with the Tier 9 Los Andes with 12-15-inch, hi Dr. Clark, 16 9.2-inch for Argentina, the Tier 10 Libertad with 12 16.5-inch and 20 9.2-inch for Chile, and the Tier 8 Atlantico with 12 15-inch and... No, I have an axe to grind here, and you'll see why. 12 15-inch and 16 9.2-inch for Brazil all have twin turrets for the main and secondaries. The problem I have is that
they're all made-up ships.
Yes, yeah, there is that. No, there is that, but they didn't even do a decent job of it. No sane naval designer in the 20th century
He's going to reinvent the Royal Sovereign.
Yeah.
I was waiting for this one. Actually, as I recall, Atlantico is technically based off a real design, just not with 9.2. She was meant to have 6 inches. Not 9.2.
Which makes sense!
Yes, I would be fine with that!
I think there was an idea that they could potentially have 8-inch.
Was
shot down of why do you need 8-inch secondaries on a battleship?
Yeah, exactly. The thing I get, I don't mind the choice to go with twins. Almost everything else about these ships, in a world where the treaties don't exist and there's slightly more economic moolah floating around South America, I can see that. It's the large secondary batteries that make literally no goddamn sense.
There is only one scenario where they would make sense. Only one scenario. Where Argentina could, for some reason, manufacture 9.2-inch ammunition, but couldn't manufacture the larger ammunition. And therefore, they carried them just in case they got a cut off of their supplies.
But even then...
That is such the nicest way, if you're going to invest to build the plant to manufacture 9.2-inch, why wouldn't you invest in the plant to manufacture 15-inch if that was your primary? So that is the only scenario that makes sense, and that scenario is so stupid, it should never happen.
I get Wargaming is trying to create battleships for nations that didn't have any, and for lines that don't have any historical precedent. But there comes a point where I go, Wargaming, lay off the vodka. Please.
They're not on vodka,
I was going to say
methamphetamine, but... they no longer have vodka because they split from Russia.
Yeah,
they do still have vodka.
They're British now.
I don't know. They mostly operate from Cyprus these days.
Technically, yes, but I believe their ownership and offices have moved to Britain.
They operate on British Cyprus legally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
that's what it is. Got it.
It's a very interesting enclave of the world.
Yeah, they get the tax breaks of
Cyprus.
The British overseas dependent territories, like the tax breaks Gibraltar gets, which means they basically don't pay taxes.
Oh well. So, YouTube question. AMC Woods asks, "Hi Fleet, how have you been? What? Oh, here we go again. What if all RAF Typhoons, along with their weapons and ground crew, multiple mid-air refueling tanks with enough fuel and ammunition for 8 months of operation of non-stop combat were sent back to World War II? Say it with me now. It's the Woods alternate history MacGuffin question. Yippee! There's one every fucking.
We've already answered the equivalent of this before.
In a nice way, that's sending back. That's like sending me back with 4-5 my sledgehammer to go and smack around Stone Age cavemen. In the nicest way, yes, I'm going to be able to bash their heads in more efficiently than they can bash my heads in with the clubs. But there's no real point. At a certain point, it's just absurd. If you're using Eurofighters, just think about the poor Eurofighter engaging any of those combat aircraft in World War II. They would have to be slamming on the air brakes so hard. They would have to be talking to their computer systems because most of their radars, etc., are not designed to engage targets that frigging slow.
I mean, so here's the funny part. I hope they have an awful lot of ASRAM because ASRAM...
No, cannon! The ASRAM won't detect. It's not going to be warm enough.
Yeah, it will.
Won't be hot enough.
ASRAM will. It's an imaging infrared seeker.
Oh.
It absolutely should be able to pick it out of the background as long as it's not hiding in the sun. The other aspect here is I don't think the biggest impact they'll have is on the ground. Because these are multi-role aircraft and you just specified that they get to go back with enough fuel and ammunition and ordnance for 6 months or 8 months of operation.
And
they're going back with paveways. They can cripple the Nazi German railway bridge infrastructure.
Oh, and they have tankers as well, so they can basically go anywhere in the world they sodding like.
Yeah, they can. And you want to talk locomotive hunting? These guys can do it easy with Brimstone.
I mean, if we've got Storm Shadow, we can just go, oh, the German surface fleet no longer exists. We found it in port.
Yeah, you hit him in port.
It's dead.
It wouldn't exist.
You are going to enjoy one of the next one from Night Fleet.
Oh boy, this is...
No.
You're staying with South America.
I might... Look.
Knight, send him to Brazil.
Bold of you to
Also, just for the record, I am now trying to also add YouTube questions to the document, so if I do miss stuff, I apologize. I'm jumping between two chats.
Woods, here's the thing. Like, I get the questions and everything, but I think a slightly different theme, perhaps, rather than modern assets go back to certain time period of war, perhaps would be nice in future? Just the thought.
It's just a case of Woods. They're fun questions, but they're very easy to answer. Basically, it's how quickly do you think you can get to what would, in effect, be almost the genocide of their air, sea, and land forces, but isn't called a genocide because it's their armed forces involved fighting each other technically.
Yes.
But it's going to be the case of it's like again if you had cavemen versus the Roman army sort of thing. It's technically called a battle, but no one who was actually watching it would consider it any different than clubbing baby seals.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was a Discord.
Honestly, no, actually, this vaguely reminds me of the Gate anime of modern military soldiers fighting Romans. How do you think this goes when you have armies of columns marching into machine gun fire? It doesn't end well.
They're just gonna pick up the radio and go, fire mission.
Yeah, I want anime where the Apache gets eaten by a dragon.
And then the dragon.
No, they manage to avoid. No, they avoid that and then launch anti-air missiles at the dragon, blowing one of its arms off.
Yeah, because there's one where they kill a young dragon and then an elder dragon comes in and just gets hit by hellfires and doesn't care.
Other way around. They kill the big dragon, then the two young dragons that are annoyed at their mother's death gets hit by artillery, anti-air missiles, machine gun fire,
missiles,
cannons,
tow missiles. Yeah.
And then to make sure they're dead, they come along with a few pounds of C4 and detonate them.
Oh, and then the Chinooks come to pick up the corpses.
It's just blank space of what?
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Move on. Wasting ammunition. You're just wasting ammunition.
Just shoot the thing in the head with a tank Sabo round. You'll be done.
At a certain point, you're just doing a military version of jerking yourself off. I've got another explosive I can use.
Right. There is a reason that anime is basically referred to as just JSDF propaganda.
It was funded by the JSDF.
It's fun to watch, but it's very much turn your brain off because JSDF gets sent to other world. Hilariousness ensues.
Totally not colonialism, we swear honest. Anyway, moving swiftly on. But anyway, so
before they start calling it the Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere.
Rune von Bismarck asks, how would you supply a nuclear-powered airborne aircraft carrier? It wouldn't be able to land often due to its size. Perhaps a skyhook-like system to yacht cargo parcels off the ground during flyby. Well, here's the thing. I can get you a nuclear. I can get you an indirect drive, nuclear thermal jet-driven flying aircraft carrier. there's only one small, tiny, little niggle in that, is that it would be flying. No, it would definitely be flying forwards. It would just be about 6 feet off the waves. Because it would be
And it would have 2 aircraft.
Yeah, it would be in a chronoplan.
Oh.
It would be in a chronoplan. I can.
And these are not. These are aircraft in the same sense a quadcopter is.
I think you can.
And you don't want to take it
better,
anywhere either because your exhaust is going to be very problematic.
Yeah.
I think you can do slightly better than that, but yeah.
Look, I am not creating that Lockheed monstrosity with the 4 massive turbojets on the wings. I'm not doing it. I've seen that thing. No, I refuse.
What Project
Oh, I
Orion
think
is
you
it?
can go slightly
Orion's
better than
the
that. The nicest way, when everyone says a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, I go, right then, when do you want to launch the spaceship? Because that's the point. If you're going to put nuclear power and you want to make it big enough and useful enough to use as something which floats up and launches aircraft, or specifically some sort of parasite craft from above the Earth's surface, then you might as well make it a spaceship. Then it's useful.
That's actually
You
hilarious.
can go and invade other planets with it.
Yay. Expands, eat your heart out. But yeah, so basically,
And we all know I would go invade other planets with it
yeah,
because it'd be fun.
So if I let me just hand wave him and say, yeah, you know what, it's Ace Combat now. And we just have airborne fortresses and stuff. Here's the thing that people forget about that is that they're not constantly airborne. They can land because they Ace Combat writers. The Ace Combat apart from the 2 sparkly showcases of the latest Ace Combat game, the Arsenal Birds.
Wax and nuclear tips. Sam's coming back.
Yeah.
Also, actually, yes, say that, Fleet, but we only have 1 confirmed one that actually lands.
No,
Actually, maybe 2. No.
No, all of the Estavakian fleet can land. The Gleipnirs can land. Here's the thing, though. They got around the solution of runways and infrastructure by making them
The
flying.
Estavakian ones are flying boats.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's such an obvious and simple solution. It's not even funny. Can't have problems with runway if entire ocean is potential runway.
You're telling me they don't just allow them getting shot down by psychopathic mutes?
Yeah, but anyway,
It's the Ace Combat. The good guys don't use nukes.
I think nukes.
yeah.
And then people who
Actually?
don't speak.
But
Actually, I think the good guys do use nukes once
Well,
or twice. But,
Osea does, but Osea is deliberately written as the good bad guys. So
yeah. What I will say is
Yeah,
that
they're basically me and Cyclic of the good side. We're the ones who go. So we're trying to win this for nice. You want us to fight this with our hands tied behind back? Look, we'll obey the rules of not blowing up civilians. But if there's a weapon, if there's an enemy target which is military, and
but
we've
that's
got
a
this
Belkin
weapon
armored
system,
division.
we will
I'm
use
calling
it.
for DPICM.
I don't give a flying hoot. In the nicest way, it's me writing a load of letters home for people who died, or me writing a note home saying, sorry, oops, I used the big gun. Which am I going to do? My people died fighting a heavy battle where they lost lives, or me writing a letter home going, oops, I used the big gun.
yeah.
sorry, this just does remind me
I'm
of when
going
you...
to write the letter around the big gun.
This does make me think on your second playthrough when you've got DLCs. Ah, yes, I'm just going to use the AFDX-01 Morgan with the nuclear burst missiles. Ah, yeah, that's a civilian area. Target that one thing, please. Oh, that's a big mushroom cloud.
Whoops.
Yes.
But the enemy's gone.
Yes, and that's the criteria. The enemy's gone. I don't have to care about anything else other than the enemy's gone.
something local buddy rearranges borders, claims yes, this is what V2 is for. Anyway, little funniness aside.
Ace Combat's fun.
So, that was a Discord question. Okay, a typical officer asks, what if FDR and the Democrats somehow lost the 1940 presidential election to Willkie and the Republicans won again in 1944? Would World War II have gone differently than IRL? Also, would the US go into
No way
more of
to
an
answer that.
isolationist, neutral country than in 1940-41? Since FDR...
There's really no way to answer that. at all. So
I don't know enough about.
We can't even speculate on that. There's literally no way.
That's such a historical branch.
We would literally just be writing fiction with no basis in fact.
Yeah, Wellesley, if you actually do succeed in making a machine that can cross timelines, yes, sure, give.
And I'll go and answer
I
all
want
the
to see
questions.
I want to see what the effects of it are. I'm not letting.
AMC Woods, I believe I answered a very similar question to this. In fact, I think I answered this question fairly recently, if I remember correctly. But I'll very quickly answer it again.
Actually, the Ships of the Line one is this.
Yes, you are in command of a Franco-Spanish fleet of 40 ships of the line and are tasked with securing the Western Mediterranean. What is your strategy for securing it, and what do you do if a British fleet comes across you? I've already answered this before.
Please, you literally answered this last week.
Oh.
This is why I have the document now. Yeah, Ramblings 53 from what I can find.
Oh. So
you're in command of a ships of the line tasked with securing West Mediterranean. What's your strategy for securing it, and what do you do if the British comes across you?
Oh, we literally did this. So yeah,
answered in 53.
Yeah, done that one. So since that doesn't count, I'll move on to another Discord question. Brackman asks, you are the new Supreme Commander of the Republic at the start of the Clone Wars. How would you set up your forces and force doctrine? What equipment would you try to get for your Galactic Army of the Republic in addition to what you currently have? Oh, that's simple. Conscription starts immediately.
Ooh, no, it doesn't.
The clones, the clones are the core of my army, but I'll be damned if I'm relying on those.
Right.
You can't start conscription immediately. You literally do not have the facilities to start it.
Yeah. We are the Supreme Commander.
I have first things first. Before even conscription, Jedi are not generals.
Yes.
They are special forces you send on very specific missions only.
Exactly, Cyclic.
Or you can't tell them to sit out the conflict in general, because why are you getting involved in a conflict? This is literally not your job. You are negotiators / mediators, not actually warriors these days.
They are still exceedingly good starfighter pilots, and have and can command fighter squadrons very well.
I'd also maybe have them in charge of the training centers training the conscript army when I set it up. Because again, the Jedi can train soldiers, and they're about the only people I have who are massively respected everywhere, who have got some combat experience.
What I will
give them a decent NCO, use the Jedi as an officer for a training camp. You've got probably a decent training camp.
What I will say, is, well, I think everyone's made good points about the Jedi and all that. What I would say is that professional soldiery will obviously lead the forces, but I do feel like I'm going to stop building my own battle droids to supplement the clones.
No, you're not.
Why not?
Because the fact that the people of already don't like droids due to the Great Droid Rebellion, where droids tried to massacre everyone, and also you're fighting
the other side as well.
Yeah, you're fighting battle droids.
I mean, the Republic
there is something I would do
battle droids
as well.
They did use some, but it wasn't the standard. Sorry, go on, Clark.
There's something I'd also do, and I'm doing this while the dog is in the garden. He's come back in. He's been out there for such a long time. I would, because I'm a sensible Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, I would bug my boss's office heavily.
Oh.
Because I want to know what he was thinking before he did it. I would be very similar as certain senior officers were in World War II of both sides, who didn't trust their bosses to tell them everything that was going on, and make sure I had my own informants going on there. And my own bugs.
Oh, yeah. I'm probably going to coup the Chancellor at some point. Let the Jedi know.
What?
Yeah.
That's not gonna go well for you, dude. At all.
I wouldn't coup the Chancellor. No. Cooing the Chancellor is wrong. I would politically embarrass the Chancellor so much he ends up having to do something stupid to try and retain his position, and then use that as a reason to get the Senate to get rid of him, and I'd just be waiting there with the armed forces already ready to go.
What makes you think I'm removing the Chancellor to keep the Republic alive? I'm installing myself as dictator.
Yeah, but how?
Why do you want the
congrats,
paperwork?
you've lost.
Yeah.
Why do you want the paperwork?
Like, there are literally orders for the clone. There are literally programmed in orders for the clones for this.
General Order 65. If the Chancellor is deemed unsuitable to be the use of clones with potentially up to lethal force to remove the Chancellor from their position and restore power to the Senate until the time in which a new Supreme Chancellor can be elected.
Well, I can play fast and loose with the rules. I can activate
No, you
it
can't.
to remove the Chancellor and then deactivate it as soon as he's dead.
How? Well, that's not how it works. Because then you're no longer in charge. The Senate is, and the Senate have to vote a new Chancellor in.
Who's got the army?
Also, at this,
and the fleet?
not you.
Not you.
Not you. No.
Like, you've got a massive conscription
too many
army.
factions.
What have you done
And
here
you've got
to
a massive
earn the
conscription
loyalty?
You've got a massive... Yeah, you know, a nice way. It ain't happening, mate. Far
What
easier to
loyalty have you gained?
Fleet, this is something you're not good at.
No, just a minute.
Understanding politics and interpersonal relationships.
Personally, stuff that I would want to try and get pushed early is I would personally want to try and get Kuat drive yards and not just Kuat, others as well, to get me more production of ships than just the bloody Venator. Get me actual proper capital ships designed to shoot other capital ships earlier. Also get me new fighters,
Preferably
please,
ones
because
that look like giant bricks in space, because they're going with the way Star Wars weapons works. They're actually the ones that get you the better firing arcs. Things like the Dreadnoughts, or what would eventually happen with the later marks of Bulwarks. Not things like Venators, not things like ISDs.
Go with the you do go with the triangle, and you follow the Rothana design of engineering, where each turret is positioned where they have full arcs of fire forwards.
So that assumes your threat is just forward. That's the problem. This is actually something we know is not the case in Star Wars. We see it all the time.
And I would also point out that we literally have this design, the Republic Dreadnought. Is it not the Dreadnought cruiser, the Republic Dreadnought?
Which Republic Dreadnought?
No, it's literally just called the Republic Dreadnought. It's like,
yeah,
it's like
which one, Fleet?
No, it's like it's a giant circle, a tube with engines on the end. It has guns pointing out in every direction.
That's not what you want. You want every single turret. This is something where the Dreadnought heavy cruiser, particularly if you look at like Fractal Sponge's view of it, actually does fairly well. Same with the Moncal designs later, with their blisters. They do a very good job of handling this, but it's designs that have precedent in the universe rather than the what's her name, the one designer that really came up with her and her father that really came up with the giant wedge when you're not talking about something as big as a Star Dreadnought. You can kind of get away with it on them because you have so much real estate and so much power, but Star Wars is really an energy game, and that's where shapes like the Dreadnought come in. They allow you to fit the maximum size of reactor in the smallest area with the most amount of firing arcs. Once shields go down in Star Wars, ships die.
Yeah.
Because it's an energy game. And if you don't have the ability to handle that, then you're in for a very bad time.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, one of my jobs is just to give the most extreme answers to questions and then let everyone else give the reasonable ones.
You keep claiming this.
It keeps working. It keeps working.
What keeps working?
Nothing. It's fine. So, moving on. Well, first things first, Knight doesn't have a question, more of a statement. The Queen Elizabeth class were built, I presume he says built with the Falklands War in mind, where Katobar was neutralized by the South Atlantic weather, whereas Hermes and Invincible weren't. And
Katobar was not neutralized by the South Atlantic weather.
Would you let me finish? I was going to...
No.
I was going to... and from the lessons of the operations of Invincible and converted Centaur Hermes. Yeah, but Cyclic is right. Catabar wasn't neutralized by the South Atlantic weather. If you're if you're talking about the Cinco de Mayo not being able to launch her strike, it's that she was a bloody light fleet carrier trying to launch fully loaded Skyhawks with no fucking wind. She doesn't even have steam cats.
And she had a propulsion casualty.
Yeah.
On top of that, like.
Yeah.
Like-
Was that the one when the plane went off the thing and the ejector seat fired him while in the ocean?
No,
Or-
they didn't even launch.
Right.
Because of they knew they weren't going to be able to successfully launch aircraft. They got into position, had the engineering casualty, and then went, nope, we can't do this. We need to do the carrier thing of, if we're not launching a strike, vacate the area.
Yep.
Mm.
Because the British would have
The
absolutely
eminently carrier sensible character.
Yeah, because the British would have absolutely taken a chance to have a crack at her if they found her.
Yes.
As far as I'm aware, there was a strike planned.
There was a submarine sitting near her called HMS
Well,
Swifter.
not beyond that, but there's a reason the British brought Sea Eagle down, too, in
Yeah.
the magazines of those ships. And while Sea Eagle isn't really large enough to kill a light fleet carrier, it will cripple the escorts, if not outright sink the escorts, and any hits you get on that carrier, because this is that era of missile, of biggest radar target, go after. You're going to cripple that carrier and make her an easy follow-up target for hits with bombs and rockets later.
That is if the submarine doesn't just get the burning Hulk with a torpedo.
Or outright sink her from the get-go.
Yeah. Question from Discord. Typical Gunnery Officer. Thoughts on the back TSR-2? Do you think if the TSR-2 was introduced, it was going to be better than the F-117? I think it would have been a contemporary to it. I think it would have been horses for courses. I don't know if... I think it would depend entirely on what weapons fit the TSR-2 would have had when brought into service. I think the TSR-2 would have been slightly less maintenance heavy because you don't have variable geometry wings. But I do think the variable geometry wings do give the F-111 slightly more flexibility than the TSR-2. But again, it's very, very minor things. They're both very similar aircraft built for a very similar role. If introduced, it's going to give Britain a very, very capable strike asset. Extremely so. Just as the F-111 gave the US an extremely capable strike asset when it was introduced. Anyone else have any comments, thoughts, opinions? Or have I pretty much hit the nail on the head, do you think?
I'm not familiar
Falcon's
enough with
overrated.
the TSR-2.
I don't know, it's a useful asset, but it's
not
honestly...
It's not meaningfully better than the F-111, but it's not meaningfully worse either. It's just British.
somewhere between the F-111 and the B-1, realistically, and frankly, it's as such, it's neither fish nor fowl.
The more useful thing would be it replacing a capability lost with the Buccaneers.
It's more about replacing capability lost with the V bombers. That's more what the TSR-2's about.
Yeah, sorry, not the Buccaneer. What am I saying? Yeah, like Vulcan and Victor and all that. I think it was because my brain went to the Black Buck raid and just took Buck to be Buccaneer for some stupid reason. But yeah, that would probably be the biggest thing.
Knight, I've said it in YouTube on chat, but I'll say it again. I said that the Argentine carrier didn't have steam catapults. She had cats and traps. She, like every other light fleet, didn't have steam catapults. None of them did. So, question from YouTube. From Knight. Going into the 1920s, Brazil has they have 1 Atlantica, 1 Riachuelo, 1 Rio de Janeiro, 2 Minas Gerais class. Argentina has 1 Andes, 1 Patagonia, 2 Rivadavias. Chile has 1 Libertad, 2 Almirante de Torres. How likely do you see an actual South American war breaking out? Extremely unlikely, because those ships are sat, tied up against the dockside, slowly rusting, while the fleets cry into their hands going, what the heck did we do to make such a poor financial decision to buy so many battleships?
I'm assuming they sort of might have partly just appeared.
I don't care.
It's the only way to assume.
They now
figure out how they just turned up.
They now have them, and they are going to sit there slowly rusting until tensions leading to World War II appear, and a bunch of salesmen in suits and jackets with large bags of British sovereigns, US dollars, German marks, Italian lira, and Japanese yen are going to show up saying, hi, so these battleships that you're not using, yeah, we'd like to put a bid in, please. And that's basically, though that is only for the ships with reasonable characteristics, so 15, 16-inch guns, anything that doesn't have that.
I'm not sure any of these ships are going to be in a workable enough position to be bought.
You're right there, yeah.
Because the economic cliff that the advent of synthetic fertilizer made for South America here is insane. So, and that's something that a lot of these, well, what if they had these, they don't understand the underlying economic conditions that led to this situation. The moment the guano market collapsed, the South American naval race is effectively over. Because none of them can afford, and they have to reorient their economies. Like, they have to do the other things that national governments require.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could at least see them, depending on the nation, trying to do things, because...
No, there is...
Let me finish.
I'm sorry, but this is...
Right. Chile at least did try and keep the Almirante La Torre going reasonably.
That's one ship.
In a decent enough... Yes.
That's not a race.
Yeah, I'm not referring to it being a race in general. I'm more going off the other point earlier. I suspect if they did somehow get this Libertad from somewhere... Or Libertad, yeah.
No,
that's the ship they would try and keep going.
No, not at all.
Even if they
No, they're going to keep the 2 Almirante La Torres, as those are 2 ships that are similar, and they're cheaper to run. And the Libertad's going to be tied up against the dockside slowly rusting. Because the other...
Well, no, it won't be slowly rusting. They'll just sell... I don't see the point why they'll just leave it rusting. They'll probably just try and sell it off either earlier or just scrap it.
Yeah, like, honestly, that is probably what's going to happen. You're probably going to see by about 1920... Literally, if they arrive in... the 1920s, by the late 20s, early 30s, there will be loud calls from Argentina, Chile, and Brazil to sell off basically all of their larger ships. So the Brazilians will probably keep Riachuelo, scrap the Rio de Janeiro, and scrap Minas Gerais, and Atlantico will be sold off. Los Andes and Patagonia will be sold off for Argentina, and the Rivadavias will be kept. Chile will sell off Libertad and keep the Almirante La Torres. Well,
I definitely don't agree about that. I think they're trying to keep Atlantico over Riachuelo.
No, Atlantico is too much.
That's the one that's most reasonable to keep.
No, Atlantico is too much ship. Riachuelo is probably a 16
QE analogous.
No, she's an 8. Yeah, she's a QE with 16-inch guns. She's far more
versus a 10, 15-inch ship,
no,
which is basically close to the enlarged. Yes.
Yeah, she has 10, 15-inch guns, but she's probably slower.
25 to 26 knots.
It's one of those. Yes, but they won't. Yes, but none of the other powers are going to keep those ships because they're too expensive to run. The Chile...
I'm not referring to it as in they're probably planning to use it again. But if they were to keep any of their ship going, I don't see it being the Riachuelo. I see it being the one that has the best chance for potential future upgrades.
There is no potential future upgrades.
Of course there is.
No, there isn't. There are minor refits, and if that.
I'm a little bit curious about this.
You're talking about the South American nations of Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. It's hard to overstate just how cash-strapped these nations are. Anything above Riachuelo, Brazil physically cannot afford to keep running or upgrade. So therefore, you have no argument.
Do we have hindsight here?
Yeah, but in general, also though, yes, it might be the harder one to maintain, but it's still the one that they could potentially argue has the most potential to be upgraded in the future.
Yes, but then the Brazilian government.
Even if the government looks at it and goes, this might be hard, the potential is there, which might make it slightly more viable to them, is how I see it.
No, the Brazilian
Are
government.
we operating under hindsight?
No.
Because in hindsight, if they have hindsight, they know that they don't have the capacity and the economy is not going to recover enough for them to do the modernizations. Without hindsight, they might.
I say we let Dr. Clark speak.
They already know.
Yeah,
they don't even need hindsight.
I'm reading the looks on his face.
Some people are commenting on it as well.
Yeah, by the 1920s, we're already into the period where the South American countries are broke and are already letting their ships degrade, and that's with the ships they already had. But yes, Dr. Clark, go on.
There is a small problem in that. Has anyone looked at the infrastructure they have to actually accommodate ship the size? Yeah. So you're saying they're going to be rusting along pier side. But the thing is, which piers?
Yeah.
Where there are the trouble is they struggle to find the right piers for the vessels they did have historically to rust alongside. The only piers you can use for the larger ships are commercial docks, which they actually need to try and keep their economy going and try and export the things they can export, i.e. meat and oil, in the case of Argentina.
Coffee.
And coffee. Look, one of the things that I have, and this gets me into trouble with some of my Scottish compatriots in this country, but it's something my family is well known on because we understand, because we have people who work in it now. Where does oil gain its money? When it comes out the ground, or when it's been distilled?
When it's being distilled.
When it's being turned into all the useful products, that's when it gains money. When it comes out the ground, the oil which actually comes out the ground isn't really worth much. If you don't have the refineries and all the systems to do the jobs to it, you don't get much money. This is the problem as also with gas and all the other natural resources. And it's the problem with Scotland is that most of the refinery space is not in Scotland. Most of the refineries are in England. So that's the problem with but whenever they start saying we've got all this natural resources wealth, is you go, well, hang on, where's it actually turned into money? It's in the refinery space. And it's the same when you start talking about South America and the resources they were pumping out. Because a lot of the resources they pumped out were the plain raw resources. And as many economies through history will tell you, pumping out raw resources doesn't give you a lot in return. It can make a small group very rich, but it can't help a whole country explode. You need to be able to do the next level where you turn those resources into something which can be used by the rest of the world. That's what gives you the larger markets and the sustainable growth. And that was always the problem for South America, and that lots of people were prepared to invest to get the resources out there, the raw materials out there, but they weren't prepared to invest and give them the money because they never trusted their governments for the stability level reasons to do it. And the governments themselves never did the thing of, well, let's invest in this ourselves, because that would have been that's the thing the governments have to do. But the governments were going, well, our elite is getting the money we want. It doesn't matter that we're not. The phrase that likes to come down with trickle economics and all those sort of things is that a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, it can only lift all boats if everyone's boats are actually viable to actually lift out the water. They don't already have holes in the hull.
Or if they have boats.
Then it just creates a lot of wrecks.
Yeah, or if they have boats to begin with, which they may not.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the more apt thing is they all potentially have boats. And they all have boats because they all have potentially the ability to innovate and the ability to sell their skills and ability to do something and learn, and if they choose to. If they don't have boats, it's often because they don't choose to. They don't go out there and try and seek the information and skills they need to, or the opportunities they need to. And yes, those things can be scary. There can be legitimate reasons why you can't do that.
I am going to point out we are getting a little bit off topic here.
Well, no, this comes back to the point of you're putting forward the case they're going to pick this ship. My view is they're not going to have much of a choice which ships they pick. Because the ships which are rusting away in the navy yards will at least be to an extent maintained as much as they rust. The ones which are rusting away in the way of the commercials facilities are going to get moved and moved again and moved again and moved again, and it's going to be like the Scottish vessel sold to the French, the vessel which started off the whole line towards the ships of the line. That vessel, it just gets lost and it ends up falling apart, and no one's quite sure what happens to it because it gets lost in a malaise of it was moved again. And it was moved again.
Well, there we are then. There you are. That's that question hammered into the ground. AMC Woods asks, what if more Numenorians survived the fall of Numenor and made it to Middle-earth? How does that affect the War of the Last Alliance? I don't know. I do not speak Lord of the Rings. Does anyone else?
Nobody's going to be able to know this, even Lord of the Rings scholars.
Well, there are some options available because we're talking
there are
about
options, but
we are talking about more of a technological modification than a personnel modification. Because let's be honest, Numenorians are basically elves when it comes to their breeding habits, so they're not really going to be that helpful in numbers in terms of massive army. It's going to be in terms of what technology do they bring and how much. And basically, you're just talking about maybe the armies sent to fight against Sauron are high medieval rather than mid medieval. But mainly that's going to have an impact in terms of the casualties they might be able to inflict, and in terms of the armor they might be able to carry. It's not really going to have a massive impact. And yes, I am a big enough geek that I have actually had once